The sound of my daughter's laughter used to be my favorite sound in the entire world. The giggle of a toddler chasing fireflies in the backyard, the unrestrained, joyous shriek of a teenager who just passed her driving test. But on that cold, bright Christmas morning, her laughter took on a different tone. It was sharp, metallic, and cold, like the blade of a knife being sharpened just before it's plunged into your heart. She looked at me, her own mother, standing in the kitchen I had designed, in the house I had built a life in, and she laughed. "You're pathetic," she said, her voice a venomous whisper that cut through the cheerful carols playing on the stereo. "You really think any of this is yours? You'll get nothing from me, not a single dime. You're just the ghost in this house now, Mom. A sad, lonely ghost. And if you've ever had your heart shattered by someone you die for, you know why channels like this exist. For those moments when the world goes quiet and all you're left with is the echo of your own breaking heart. If you understand that pain, then you understand my story. And if you want to see how a ghost can come back to life and make sure the people who betrayed them regret it forever, then you're in the right place. Stay with me, because this is the story of how I lost everything, only to win it all back. I need to take you back. Before the Christmas morning that shattered me, before the betrayal that hollowed me out. I need to show you the Taman picture, so you can understand the depth of the Taman picture. After Bitaman, my name is Evelyn Archer. For 32 years, I was Evelyn Archer Williams, but we'll get to that. I was a wife, a mother, an interior designer. My life was built on a foundation I believed was unshakable. Love, family, trust. My husband, Robert Williams, was a commercial real estate developer. Successful, charming, the kind of man who could walk into a room and own it without saying a word. We met in college, 2 kids with big dreams. He was the ambitious business major. I was the artsy history major who painted on the weekends. We built a life from scratch. Our first apartment was a 500-square-foot studio that smelled of old carpet and our dreams, which were so big they somehow made the place feel vast. We had our daughter, Chloe, when we were 25. She was our miracle. My entire world narrowed and expanded all at once the first time I held her. Robert cried. We promised her everything. We promised each other everything. We worked hard. Robert's business took off. My design firm, which I started from our sunroom, began to land bigger and bigger clients. We built our dream home on a wooded lot just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. It wasn't a mansion, but it was us. I designed every inch of it. The farmhouse kitchen with the Calicut gold marble counters, where I taught Chloe how to make chocolate chip cookies. The sun-drenched living room with the oversized sectional where we'd all pile on for movie nights. The wide plank oak floors that gleamed under the light of the Christmas tree. This wasn't just a house. It was a living scrapbook of our lives. Chloe, my Chloe. She was my best friend. We were the classic mother-daughter duo. Shopping trips to New York. Spa weekends. Late night talks about her dreams, her fears, her heartbreaks. I thought we told each other everything. I believed our bond was a fortress. She went to college, majored in business like her father, and joined his firm straight out of school. I was so proud. My 2 favorite people, building an empire together. I'd bring them lunch at the office sometimes, just to see them in their element. Robert behind his massive oak desk, Chloe leaning over his shoulder, pointing at something on a blueprint, both of them laughing. It was a picture-perfect life. I know how that sounds. Naive. But that's what it was. Perfect. The first crack was so small, so insignificant, I almost missed it. It was a Thursday. I remember because it was my night to cook, and I was making Robert's favorite, beef bourguignon. The house was filled with the rich, comforting smells of wine, thyme, and seared meat. I'd set the table with our nice china, lit the candles. Robert was late, but that wasn't unusual. Chloe was late too. I figured they were working together on a big project. When Robert finally came in, he looked tired. He dropped his briefcase by the door, gave me a absent-minded kiss on the cheek, and headed straight for the liquor cabinet. "Tough day?" I asked, stirring the stew. "The usual," he mumbled, pouring 2 fingers of scotch. He didn't offer any more. I let it go. We ate dinner mostly in silence. He scrolled through emails on his phone, his brow furrowed. "How's Chloe?" I asked. trying to draw him out. She didn't text me back today. Is she swamped with the Fairfield account? Robert didn't look up from his phone. Oh yeah, swamped. He took a bite of stew. This is great, Evie. But his tone was flat, distant. There was a space between us at that table, a cold, invisible gap that hadn't been there before. I told myself I was imagining it. He was just stressed, tired. This was what 32 years of marriage looked like, right? Comfortable silence. A few weeks later, the silence got louder. We were at a charity gala, one we went to every year. I was in a new emerald green gown, my hair done. Robert had told me I looked beautiful when I came downstairs. But at the event, he was different. He kept his distance. When I went to loop my arm through his as we walked to our table, he subtly shifted his posture, pretending to adjust his cufflink so my hand fell away. It was a tiny thing, a nothing. But it felt like a rejection. A small, deliberate one. I saw him across the room, laughing with a group of investors. His laugh was the same one I'd fallen in love with. Loud, full-bodied, genuine. He wasn't too tired for them. He was the life of the party. For them. I felt a hot prickle of foolishness. There I was, in my emerald green gown, feeling utterly invisible in a room full of people. On the drive home, I tried to brush it off. You seem to be having a good time with the Henderson Group, I said lightly. They're putting in capital for the new waterfront development, he said, his eyes fixed on the road. It's a big deal. I know it is. I'm happy for you. For us. He just nodded. The silence in the car was heavy, suffocating. I rolled down the window, needing air. Are you okay, Robert? I finally asked, the words sounding too loud in the quiet car. You've been distant lately. He sighed, a long, weary sound. Evelyn, I'm just tired. It's a lot of pressure, providing for this family, keeping the business afloat. You have no idea the stress I'm under. The words stung. You have no idea. He'd never said anything like that to me before. We were a team. I did know. I'd been there since the beginning. Budgeting, scrimping, supporting him. I think I do have an idea, I said, my voice quiet. I've been right beside you for all of it. That's not what I meant, he said, but his tone said it was exactly what he meant. Just drop it, okay? I'm fine. Everything is fine. Everything was not fine. But for a while I convinced myself it was. We fell back into a rhythm, a surface-level normalcy. We had dinner with friends. We went to the country club on Sundays. We hosted a 4th of July barbecue. The house was full of laughter and the smell of charcoal and citronella candles. Chloe brought her new boyfriend, Mark, a sleek, handsome lawyer from her firm. They seemed serious. Robert clapped Mark on the back, poured him expensive whiskey, and talked about the market. They looked like two peas in a pod. I watched them from the patio, a strange, cold feeling settling in my stomach. It felt like I was watching a play, and everyone knew their lines except me. The undercurrent of tension was always there, just beneath the shiny surface. It was in the way Robert's phone was always face down on the nightstand. It was in the hushed, hurried phone calls he'd take in his home office, the door firmly closed. It was in the way Chloe would sometimes look at me, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Impatience? Pity? Before her expression would smooth over into a smile. You're being paranoid, Mom, she said one afternoon when I tentatively brought it up. We were having iced tea on the back porch. Dad's under a lot of pressure. This new development is massive. And Mark says the legalities are a nightmare. Cut him some slack. She reached over and patted my hand. It felt condescending. And you should find a hobby. Seriously. You're always in this house, puttering around. You need to get out more. I pulled my hand back, stung. I have my business, Chloe. I have friends. I know, she said, sipping her tea. But it's not the same, is it? Maybe take a pottery class or something. Putting around. The words echoed in my head. She made my life, the life I had built for our family, sound small and insignificant. A hobby. The betrayals started to multiply. They were small, paper-cut insults, but they bled more than anyone could see. It was my birthday. Robert usually went all out. Flowers, a lavish dinner, a thoughtful gift. This year, a bouquet of grocery store carnations sat on the kitchen island. The card read, "Happy birthday. Sorry, swamped? Dinner next week? Sir. Next week came and went. He forgot. Chloe's gift was a generic scented candle and a gift card to a chain store. She hadn't even bothered to remove the price tag. "Oh, thanks, Mom," she said, giving me a quick, airy hug. "You really shouldn't have." I'd spent weeks finding a first edition of her favorite childhood book, having it specially restored and bound. It was sitting in my closet, wrapped and ready. I never gave it to her. The candle and gift card felt like a message. I was an afterthought. The gossip started. I heard it first from my so-called friend, Susan, at the club. "Evelyn, darling," she'd said, leaning in conspiratorially. "I hope everything's all right at home. I saw Robert at the Oak Room last week. He was having a very intense dinner with that stunning new junior partner at his firm. Alicia? Something like that. I just thought you should know." My blood ran cold. The Oak Room was where we'd had our anniversary dinner for 20 years. I forced a laugh. "Oh, that's just Alicia Vance. She's heading up the Fairfield project with him and Chloe. It's all business, I assure you." Susan had just smiled a tight, knowing smile. "Of course it is, dear." I confronted Robert that night, my voice shaking. He was furious. Not that I'd accused him, but that I'd embarrassed him. "How dare you?" he thundered, his face turning a mottled red. "Spying on me? Listening to the idle gossip of jealous harpies?" "Alicia is a brilliant mind. She's half my age, for God's sake, Evelyn. Do you really think I'd be that cliché?" He made me feel small, crazy, jealous. He made me apologize for doubting him. And the worst part? I did. I apologized. I was so desperate to hold on to the life, the man, I thought I had. But then, the false kindness began. The manipulation. It was Robert's way. He'd blow cold, then suddenly blow warm, keeping me off balance. After a week of tense silence following the Alicia incident, he came home with a huge bouquet of my favorite lilies and a bracelet from Tiffany's. "I'm sorry, Evie," he said, pulling me into a hug that felt just a little too tight. "I've been a monster. This project is killing me. You're my rock. I don't know what I'd do without you." He took me out to a fancy dinner. He held my hand across the table. He told stories about our early days, laughing in all the right places. The charm was turned on to full blast. I wanted to believe it. God, I wanted to believe it so badly. I melted. I told myself Susan was a bitter busybody. I told myself that distance was all in my head. He loved me. We were a team. The stakes got higher. Much higher. It started with a casual comment about the house. We were in the kitchen, and I was talking about maybe renovating the master bath. Finally putting in that soaking tub I'd always wanted. Robert froze, a strange look on his face. "Now's not the time for that, Evelyn." "Why not? Business is good, isn't it?" "The market is volatile," he said, a little too quickly. "Liquid capital is important. We shouldn't be sinking it into non-essentials." "Our home isn't an essential?" I asked, bewildered. "You know what I mean," he snapped, then softened his tone. "Just, let's table it for now, okay? Trust me." Then came the conversation about the trust fund. My parents had left me a sizable inheritance, which we'd always kept in a separate trust, a nest egg for our retirement and for Chloe. It was managed by Robert's financial guy, but I was a co-signer. Or so I thought. I got a call from the bank about a routine statement. The woman on the phone was polite. "And just to confirm, you're requesting the statements be sent to the business address from now on? P.O. Box 8472? "No," I said, a chill creeping up my spine. "No, they should come here, to my home address." "I'm sorry," she said, her voice confused. "Our records show a change of address authorization was filed last month, under your signature." I never signed anything. I hung up, my hands trembling. I called Robert, panic rising in my throat. "Evelyn, calm down," he said, his voice smooth, patronizing. "It's a clerical error, probably Ted's new assistant at the office. I'll look into it, don't worry your pretty little head about it." But I was worried. For the first time, a real, cold fear was starting to take root. This wasn't a missed birthday or a hushed phone call. This was money. Our future. The shift happened on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday. The catalyst was something so mundane. A misplaced charger. Robert was out of town at a conference. Or so he said. His laptop charger was always a point of contention. He was forever forgetting it. He'd called me from the road, frantic. "EV, you're a lifesaver. It must be in my study, maybe plugged in behind the desk. Can you messenger it to the hotel? I'll text you the address. You're the best." I went into his study, a room I rarely entered anymore. It was his sanctum. I found the charger, and as I was unplugging it, my elbow knocked a stack of folders off his desk. Papers scattered everywhere. Cursing under my breath, I knelt to gather them up. That's when I saw it. A document from a law firm I didn't recognize. Schiller and Grafton, LLC. The heading made my blood run cold. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Divorce. He was filing for divorce. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the paper. I scrabbled through the other pages. There were financial statements, our joint accounts, my business accounts. My design firm was listed as a marital asset with a value next to it. He was valuing my life's work. There were property deeds. Our house. The vacation cabin in Vermont my father had left to me. It was all there, itemized, quantified, ready to be divided. But that wasn't the worst of it. Tucked behind the divorce petition was another document, a trust amendment. For my parents' trust, the one I thought was untouchable. It was a change of beneficiary form. My name was being removed. The new primary beneficiary was listed as Chloe Marie Williams, and at the bottom of the page there were 2 signatures, Robert's, and a shaky, familiar forgery of my own. The world tilted, the floor fell away, I couldn't breathe. This was more than betrayal. This was demolition. They weren't just leaving me. They were planning to strip me of everything. My home, my business, my security, my past. They had been working together, Robert and Chloe, my husband and my daughter. It was a coordinated, cold-blooded takeover of my entire life. I felt a physical pain, a searing hot ache in my chest. I stumbled to the bathroom and vomited. I sat on the cold tile floor, tears streaming down my face, but they weren't tears of sadness anymore. They were tears of pure, unadulterated rage, the kind of rage that burns away everything else. Grief, fear, love. All that was left was a cold, hard, diamond core of resolve. He thought I was a ghost, a sad, lonely ghost, puttering around in her hobby? No. A ghost can walk through walls. A ghost can be everywhere and nowhere. A ghost can wait, and a ghost can have a memory longer than any living soul. I got up, I washed my face, I went back into that study, and I took pictures of every single page with my phone. Then I put everything back exactly as I found it. I packaged up the charger and sent it to his hotel, and I started to plan. The isolation was the most brutal part. Now that I knew the truth, I could see the walls they'd been building around me for months. My friends drifted away. I later found out Robert and Chloe had been quietly feeding them stories, that I was unstable, that I was having episodes, that I was jealous and paranoid, accusing Robert of affairs with young women at his office. They made me sound unhinged, so when I stopped getting invitations, I thought it was me. When I tried to call people for lunch, they were suddenly so busy. Even my own sister Sarah seemed distant. I finally broke down and called her, my voice cracking as I tried to explain that I thought Robert and Chloe were conspiring against me. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Evie, honey," she said, her voice dripping with a pity that felt like acid. Have you thought about talking to someone? A therapist? Robert loves you. Chloe adores you. This just doesn't make any sense." "You don't believe me," I whispered, the betrayal slicing even deeper. "I believe that you believe it," she said carefully. "And that's what worries me. Maybe you should come stay with me for a few days. Get some rest." They had gotten to her too. They had isolated me completely. I was alone in the house that was no longer my home, surrounded by the ghosts of the family I thought I had. The first discovery, the one in the study, was just the tip of the iceberg. The real, shocking proof came from a place I never expected. My own garden. In the midst of my despair, gardening was the only thing that kept me sane. The mindless, physical act of digging, planting, weeding. It was my therapy. One afternoon, I was ripping out the dead summer annuals to make way for fall mums. My trowel hit something hard and metallic. I thought it was a rock. I dug around it, my fingers clawing at the cold soil. It wasn't a rock. It was a small, locked, waterproof firebox. My heart started to hammer. I smuggled it inside, under my sweater, and took it to the potting shed out back. With a screwdriver and a lot of force, I pried the lock open. Inside, wrapped in a plastic bag, was a burner phone, and a key, and a stack of documents. The documents were printouts of emails. Emails between Robert and Chloe. The subject lines made me nauseous. Mom's declining state, strategy for the med-eval. Transfer of deed for the Vermont property, her signature attached. Liquidation of EA Design assets, timeline. I scrolled through, my vision blurring with tears of fury. They were discussing me like a business problem, a liability to be managed and disposed of. They talked about having me declared mentally incompetent to make getting power of attorney easier. They referenced a lawyer, someone named Grafton, and how he was assuring them the prenup I'd signed decades ago was airtight in Robert's favor. A prenup I'd signed because he said it was just a formality for his investors, that it would never matter between us. But the most devastating email was the last one. From Chloe to Robert. Dad spoke with Mark. He confirms the trust amendment is legally binding. Once we trigger the divorce, she'll be homeless. The life insurance policy is the final piece. Once that pays out, we'll be set. Don't get sentimental now, we've come too far. She was never your partner. She was just a stepping stone. We're the real team. Love, life insurance. They weren't just going to take everything I had, they were planning for me to die. My own daughter. My Chloe, the little girl I'd rocked to sleep, whose skinned knees I'd kissed, whose heartbreaks I'd mended. She was talking about my death as a financial event. A final piece. I sat in that potting shed for hours, until the light faded and the cold seeped into my bones. I didn't cry anymore. The well was dry. I was past rage. I was in a place of pure, crystalline clarity. They had declared war on me, and I was going to win. The first time the betrayer gloated, it was subtle. It was a week before Thanksgiving. Chloe came over, a saccharine smile plastered on her face. She was holding a brochure for a retirement community. I was just thinking of you, Mom, she said, her voice sickly sweet. Look at this place, Sunset Acres, isn't it lovely? They have activities, bridge clubs, water aerobics. I thought, once the house sells, you might need a fresh start, somewhere manageable. She was already selling my house. She was already packing me off to a retirement home. I looked at the brochure, then back at her. I could see the triumph in her eyes, barely concealed. She thought she'd already won. She thought I was broken, defeated, a simple-minded fool who wouldn't fight back. I took the brochure. I made my voice frail, confused. Oh, that's so thoughtful of you, sweetheart. It looks nice. Her smile widened. I knew you'd see it that way. It's for the best. She leaned in and kissed my cheek. Her perfume, the expensive French fragrance I'd bought her for her last birthday, smelled like poison. The memories, the good ones, became a special kind of torture. I'd be going through a drawer, looking for more evidence, and I'd find a Mother's Day card Chloe had made me in 3rd grade, with crayon drawings of the two of us holding hands under a rainbow. To the best mommy in the world, I'd find a photo of Robert and me on our wedding day, his face young and open, looking at me like I'd hung the moon. Those memories were like landmines. They'd explode without warning, shredding whatever was left of my heart. How had we gotten from there to here? How had that love curdled into this calculated hatred? I realized then that the past wasn't a sanctuary. It was a crime scene. And every happy memory was now evidence of a love that had been a lie far longer than I'd ever suspected. The second, deeper discovery came from the key in the firebox. I had no idea what it unlocked. I tried everything. His desk drawers, his filing cabinet, a safe I didn't know the combination to. Then, on a hunch, I drove to his office on a Sunday when I knew it would be empty. I used my old key, the one he'd never asked for back, to let myself in. The place was silent, eerie. His personal office was locked. The key from the garden fit perfectly. Inside, it smelled of his cologne and ambition. I went straight for his filing cabinet. The key didn't fit any of those locks. I was about to give up when I noticed a panel on the bottom of the large bookcase behind his desk. It looked decorative. I pushed it. It slid open, a hidden compartment. Inside was a single, thick folder. This was the mother lode. This was the double betrayal, revealed in stark black and white detail. It wasn't just Robert and Chloe. It was Mark, the handsome lawyer boyfriend. He wasn't just dating Chloe. He was their lawyer. Their lawyer. He was the one at Schiller and Grafton, who was masterminding the entire takeover. The folder contained drafts of the divorce petition, memos from Mark to Robert outlining strategy, notes on how to hide assets, my assets, in offshore accounts. And there, clipped to the back, was a photograph. A selfie of Robert, Chloe, and Mark, grinning, toasting with champagne glasses in a restaurant. The date stamp on the photo was from over a year ago. This had been in the works for over a year. Mark wasn't just her boyfriend. He was their partner in crime. The three of them were a team, and I was the target. My hidden strength came from a place of absolute darkness. There was no hope left. There was no love left to lose. That was my power. They had nothing left to threaten me with. I became a scholar of revenge. I hired a private investigator, a stoic, no-nonsense woman named Grace, who asked no questions and got results. I paid her in cash, from what was left of my personal savings account, the one Robert didn't know about. I became a ghost in my own life. I played my part perfectly. The confused wife. The loving, slightly clueless mother. I made them dinner. I asked about their days. I listened to them lie to my face, and I smiled and nodded. Inside, I was cataloging every lie, every smirk, every moment of false pity. I was building my case. The final cruelty, Betrayer's Power 2, came at Thanksgiving. We were supposed to have a quiet family dinner. Just the three of us. But Robert announced that Mark would be joining us. "He's family now, after all," Robert said, clapping Mark on the shoulder. They sat at my table, ate my food, drank my wine, and they laughed. They laughed about the market, about a client they'd swindled, about their big plans. They were giddy, drunk on their own impending victory. Then Chloe looked at me, her eyes glinting with malice. "You know, Mom, Mark's firm handles estates. We were thinking, once you're settled at Sunset Acres, we should really get your affairs in order. A new will. You wouldn't want to be a burden, would you?" Mark nodded, his lawyerly demeanor firmly in place. "It's just prudent, Evelyn. We can make sure everything transitions smoothly to Chloe, to avoid any messy probate later." They were sitting at my table on Thanksgiving discussing my will, planning my death right to my face. They thought it was over. They thought I was already gone. Robert raised his glass. "To family?" he said, a smug, victorious smile on his face. I raised my glass. I looked each of them in the eye. "To family," I echoed, my voice steady. "May we get exactly what we deserve." The execution of my revenge began the next day. My first stop was a lawyer, not a divorce lawyer, a shark. A legendary, feared litigator named Elizabeth Croft, who specialized in financial fraud and elder abuse. I brought her the firebox. I brought her the photos from Robert's study. I brought her the files from his hidden compartment. I brought her the reports from my private investigator, which included financial trails, records of their secret meetings, and proof that Mark had a history of unethical, nearly disparable conduct at his previous firm. Elizabeth Croft looked over the evidence, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. "Mrs. Williams," she said, "this is not a divorce. This is a prosecution. Leave everything to me." The second phase was gathering witnesses. My PI, Grace, found them. The junior partner, Alicia Vance, who wasn't having an affair with Robert at all, he'd been trying to pressure her into helping him cook the books, and she'd refused, which is why he'd badmouthed her to me. She was more than willing to testify. Grace found Robert's former business partner, whom he'd cheated out of millions years ago, a man who held a grudge and had kept meticulous records. She even tracked down the notary public who had supposedly witnessed my signature on the trust amendment, a woman who confirmed she'd never met me, that Robert and Chloe had brought her the documents already signed. We planned our confrontation for the reading of the will. Not my will, Robert's. My PI had discovered something else, something so shocking it was the linchpin of our entire plan. Robert, in his arrogance, had taken out a massive life insurance policy on himself years ago, with Chloe as the beneficiary. But he'd never updated it after we'd done extensive estate planning. The policy was still active, but it was owned by an irrevocable trust, of which I was the sole trustee. In the event of his death, I controlled the multi-million-dollar payout. Elizabeth Croft's eyes had lit up like Christmas trees. "We," she said, "are not going to wait for a divorce." The dramatic confrontation took place in the wood-paneled conference room of Schiller and Grafton. They thought they were there for a routine settlement meeting. Robert, Chloe, and Mark were already there, looking smug and impatient when I walked in with Elizabeth Croft and a paralegal. "Evelyn, finally," Robert said, not even standing up. "Let's get this over with. I hope you're ready to be reasonable." "Oh, I'm always reasonable, Robert," I said, taking a seat opposite them. Mark opened a folder. "We're prepared to offer a one-time settlement, Evelyn. It's generous, considering the circumstances." He slid a paper across the table. It was a laughably low number. It wouldn't have covered 2 years of living expenses. "That's it?" I asked, my voice quiet. "That's it," Chloe said, a cruel smile on her lips. "Take it, Mom. It's more than you deserve." "I don't think so," I said. That's when Elizabeth Croft took over. "My client declines your offer," she said, her voice like ice. "In fact, we are not here to discuss divorce today. We are here to discuss the numerous criminal acts you have perpetrated against Mrs. Williams." She began to lay it out. The forgery, the fraud, the conspiracy to commit elder abuse, the attempted theft of separate property, the ethical violations by Mr. Mark Higgins, which we had already reported to the State Bar Association. Their faces went from smug to confused to pale with shock. Mark started sputtering about evidence. Robert slammed his hand on the table. "This is outrageous! You have no proof of any of this." "We have every proof," I said calmly. I looked at Chloe. "We have the emails you thought you deleted, the ones from the burner phone you buried in my petunia bed." Her face went sheet white. She knew it was over. "And," Elizabeth Croft said, pausing for maximum effect, "we are here to discuss the matter of life insurance policy number L847-30298, held by Mr. Robert Williams." Robert frowned. "What about it? That's Chloe's." "No," Croft said. "It is owned by the Robert Williams Irrevocable Trust, of which Mrs. Evelyn Williams is the sole trustee and beneficiary. Upon your death, she decides if and how the payout is distributed." The room was silent. "But that's not the interesting part," Croft continued. "The interesting part is the cause of death clause. You see, if the insured party commits suicide within the first 2 years of the policy, which he did, the payout is typically void. However, if the trustee can prove extreme duress or coercion leading to the suicide, the payout may be considered." Robert looked like he'd been shot. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything," Croft said. "I'm simply stating facts. The financial records we've subpoenaed show you are personally and professionally insolvent. This scheme was your last, desperate gamble. When you realize it has failed, well, we're just ensuring all outcomes are covered." It was a bluff. A magnificent, terrifying bluff. We had no intention of doing anything of the sort. But we knew Robert's ego, his pride. The thought of being exposed as a bankrupt fraud, of losing everything, of having his fate be in my hands, it was a threat he couldn't bear. He stood up, his chair scraping backwards. He pointed a shaking finger at me. You witch!" "Sit down, Robert," Elizabeth Croft said, her voice low and dangerous. "We're not done. We have federal bank fraud investigators waiting in the lobby. They're very interested in those offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands." That was the final blow. Robert collapsed into his chair, his head in his hands. Chloe was sobbing, begging me to stop. Mark was frantically scrolling through his phone, calling his own lawyer, realizing his career was over. The aftermath was a tidal wave of shock and downfall. Robert, faced with decades in prison for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy, took a plea deal. He surrendered everything to me, the house, the business, all assets, in exchange for me not pressing further charges. He now lives in a one-bedroom apartment, a broken, disgraced man. Mark was disbarred and is facing charges of his own. And Chloe? She got nothing. The trust amendment was thrown out as fraudulent. She was disinherited from my will completely. The last I heard of her, she was living with a friend, trying to find a job, but her reputation is so toxic in this town that no one will hire her. The community was, of course, shocked. The whispers stopped. The pitying looks were now directed at them. My friends came crawling back, full of apologies I didn't accept. My sister Sarah apologized profusely. I forgave her, but things will never be the same. How could they be? The resolution isn't a happy ending. How could it be? You don't come back from a betrayal like that whole. The house is quiet now. Too quiet. I still sometimes expect to hear Robert's key in the door or Chloe's laughter floating down the stairs. But I don't. I'm redecorating, painting over the colors we chose together, making it mine again. The ghost is no longer haunting this house. She owns it. I learned that the people you love the most hold the sharpest knives. I learned that trust isn't something you give, it's something that's earned, and it can be revoked in a second. But most of all, I learned about my own strength. I found a core of steel I never knew I had. When you have nothing left to lose, you find out exactly who you are. They thought I was weak. They thought I was a ghost. They thought I would just fade away. But on that Christmas morning, when my daughter laughed and told me I'd get nothing from her, she had no idea that her words would be the spark that lit the fire, a fire that burned their entire world to the ground. And if you're listening to this and you're in the dark place I was in, if you feel betrayed and broken and alone, I want you to hear this. You are not a ghost. You are a force of nature. Your pain is your power. Your silence is your strategy. And your revenge will be a work of art. So be patient. Be smart. Document everything. Find your Elizabeth Croft. And when the time is right, stand up, look them in the eye, and give them exactly what they deserve. If you felt that, if you've ever been betrayed and you're ready to find your strength, then do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Because this channel is for us, for the ghosts who are ready to come back to life. And we're just getting started. Thanks for listening.